Okay guys, welcome back. In this lesson we're going to graph quadratic equations and we're going to identify the domain and range. So you need to write down the equation in number 1 and then you're going to need to make a graph. And you're going to need to make a table like the one you see here. And when we're picking x values to plug into our equation, especially when you have a fraction in your equation that we're going to have to multiply by, it's easier to choose numbers that are factors of that are multiples of that 3, so that it makes it easier when we are dividing. So what I mean, I know I have to get 5. I'm going to put 0 in the middle because I'm going to do positive and negative numbers. And then I'm also going to put 3 here, negative 3, and I'm going to put negative 6 here. And then I'm going to put 3 here, and then I'm going to put 6 here. Okay, so now in the top here, my equation is y equals 1/3 x squared. So I plug that in. I do 1/3 times negative 6 squared. And negative 6 times negative 6 is 36. And 36 divided by 3 is 12. So this ordered pair is negative 6, 12. Okay, so if I do the next one, 1/3 and negative 3 squared. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. 9 times 1/3 will be 3. So I'll have negative 3, 3. Plug in 0. 1/3 times 0 squared. 0 times 0 is 0. Times 1/3 is 0. Plug in 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 1/3 is 3, so we get 3, 3. And we do 1/3 times 6 squared. 6 times 6, 36, times 1/3 will give me 12, 6, 12. Now remember in the previous video, I showed you that in a table, the numbers should be symmetrical, and they should repeat. You should get the 12, the 3, the 0, then the 3, then the 12. All right, so if we were to graph this, negative 6, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then up 12, this should be 10, 11, 12. So I'm just at the very edge of my graph. Negative 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 0, 0. 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 12. And there's our parabola. Okay, so remember it should be U-shaped because we have an exponent of 2. Now it's asking us to identify the domain and range. Domain is asking you what x values work in this equation. And you need to think, are there only certain numbers that I can plug in for x? Could we plug in that 1 or 2 or a half? And in fact, you can. Remember, I just told you I picked multiples of 3 to make my life easier. But technically, I can plug in any x into this equation and get an output and get a y. So our domain then is all real numbers. And it will be like that it should be like that for all quadratic equations. Now the range is what's going to change. The range are your y values. And it's asking you what kind of outputs are you going to get. Well, if you look at our parabola, if you notice here, it does not ever go below that 0 on the y-axis. So that means our range has values for y that are greater than or equal to 0. Okay, they can be numbers that are greater than 0, any number greater, but they never are going to all of a sudden dip back down, okay, because it's making a parabola a U-shape. Okay, let's try one more graph in this part. So please write down our equation, y equals negative 3x squared, and write down the domain. Oh, it wants to highlight that whole thing. Write down the table. Okay, and with this one, we don't have a fraction, so we can pretty much pick any numbers. I'm going to pick the small numbers from -2 to 2. I'm going to write that in here, -2, -1. I'm going to fill in my equation, -3x squared. Okay, and you plug each one in, -3 times -2 squared. You have to do the order of operations, so you're going to do the exponent first. -2 times -2 is 4. 4 times -3 will be -12, so it's -2, comma, -12. Okay, plug in -1, so we have -3 times -1 squared. -1 times -1 is 1 times -3 is -3. -1, -3. Plug in 0. You'll get 0. Plug in 1. 1 times 1 is 1 times -3 is -3. And you should see the y's are starting to repeat again. -12, -3, 0, -3. This should be 12, -12. Oh, -3 goes there. Times 2 squared. 4 times -3 is -12. Okay. Now we're going to plot our points. Notice your y's are negative, so I'm going to move this down a little bit because I'm going to be using the lower quadrants. I have -2 and I have -12. This is 10. Oh, 11. I'm going to go just off of my graph there, 12. -1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 0, 0, 1, 3, 2, 12. And there's my parabola. Okay, so let's talk about our domain. What x values could we plug in? We could have plugged in 100. We could plug in anything. So our domain is all real numbers. Our range are what outputs are we getting? And if you look this time, all the y's now are less than or equal to 0. None of them go up into the positives. So our y values are less than or equal to 0. And that is your range. So that's it. That's our domain and range. Stay tuned for the next part.